Welcome to the timeless tale of love and tragedy. Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy written by William Shakespeare early in his career about the romance between two Italian youths from feuding families. It was among Shakespeare's most popular plays during his lifetime, and along with Hamlet, is one of his most frequently performed. Today, the title characters are regarded as archetypal young lovers. Romeo and Juliet belongs to a tradition of tragic romances stretching back to antiquity. The plot is based on an Italian tale written by Matteo Bandello and translated into verse as The Tragical History of Romeo and Juliet by Arthur Brooke in 1562 and retold in prose in Palace of Pleasure by William Painter in 1567. Shakespeare borrowed heavily from both but expanded the plot by developing a number of supporting characters, in particular Mercutio and Paris. Believed to have been written between 1591 and 1595, the play was first published in a quarto version in 1597. The text of the first quarto version was of poor quality, however, and later editions corrected the text to conform more closely with Shakespeare's original. Shakespeare's use of poetic dramatic structure has been praised as an early sign of his dramatic skill. Romeo and Juliet has been adapted numerous times for stage, film, musical, and opera venues. From the English Restoration to the 20th and 21st century, this enduring masterpiece continues to captivate audiences worldwide. Experience the timeless beauty of Romeo and Juliet. The story, set in Verona, Italy, begins with a street brawl between Montague and Capulet servants, who, like the masters they serve, are sworn enemies. Prince Aeschylus of Verona intervenes and declares that further breach of the peace will be punishable by death. Later, Count Paris talks to Capulet about marrying his daughter Juliet, but Capulet asks Paris to wait another 2 years and invites him to attend a planned Capulet ball. Lady Capulet and Juliet's nurse try to persuade Juliet to accept Paris's courtship. Meanwhile, Benvolio talks with his cousin Romeo, Montague's son, about Romeo's recent depression. Benvolio discovers that it stems from unrequited infatuation for a girl named Rosalind, one of Capulet's nieces. Persuaded by Benvolio and Mercutio, Romeo attends the ball at the Capulet house in hopes of meeting Rosalind. However, Romeo instead meets and falls in love with Juliet. Juliet's cousin Tybalt is enraged at Romeo for sneaking into the ball, but is stopped from killing Romeo by Juliet's father, who does not wish to shed blood in his house. After the ball, in what is now famously known as the balcony scene, Romeo sneaks into the Capulet orchard and overhears Juliet at her window, vowing her love to him in spite of her family's hatred of the Montagues. Romeo makes himself known to her, and they agree to be married. With the help of Friar Lawrence, who hopes to reconcile the two families through their children's union, they are secretly married the next day. Tybalt, meanwhile, still incensed that Romeo had sneaked into the Capulet ball, challenges him to a duel. Romeo, now considering Tybalt his kinsman, refuses to fight. Mercutio is offended by Tybalt's insolence, as well as Romeo's vile submission, and accepts the duel on Romeo's behalf. Mercutio is fatally wounded when Romeo attempts to break up the fight and declares a curse upon both households before he dies. A plague on both your houses. Grief-stricken and racked with guilt, Romeo confronts and slays Tybalt. Montague argues that Romeo has justly executed Tybalt for the murder of Mercutio. The prince, now having lost a kinsman in the warring family's feud, exiles Romeo from Verona under penalty of death if he ever returns. Romeo secretly spends the night in Juliet's chamber, where they consummate their marriage. Capulet, misinterpreting Juliet's grief, agrees to marry her to Count Paris and threatens to disown her when she refuses to become Paris's joyful bride. When she then pleads for the marriage to be delayed, her mother rejects her. Juliet visits Friar Lawrence for help, and he offers her a potion that will put her into a death-like coma or catalepsy for 42 hours. The friar promises to send a messenger to inform Romeo of the plan so that he can rejoin her when she awakens. On the night before the wedding, she takes the drug and when discovered apparently dead, she is laid in the family crypt. The messenger, however, does not reach Romeo, and instead, Romeo learns of Juliet's apparent death from his servant Balthazar. Heartbroken, Romeo buys poison from an apothecary and goes to the Capulet crypt. He encounters Paris, who has come to mourn Juliet privately. Believing Romeo to be a vandal, Paris confronts him, and in the ensuing battle, Romeo kills Paris. Still believing Juliet to be dead, he drinks the poison. Juliet then awakens and, discovering that Romeo is dead, stabs herself with his dagger and joins him in death. The feuding families and the prince meet at the tomb to find all three dead. Friar Lawrence recounts the story of the two star-crossed lovers, fulfilling the curse that Mercutio swore. The families are reconciled by their children's deaths and agree to end their violent feud. The play ends with the prince's elegy for the lovers, for never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. Make sure to watch this video of the infamous love story between Cleopatra and Mark Antony.